Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Well, hi again, everybody. This is Rob Godlewski with the Think Small podcast. And today our special guest is Kerrigan. Karen is the president and CEO of the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council, or the SBE Council. Karen, so great to have you on the Think Small podcast today.
Oh, so great to join you. Thanks for having me, Rob.
Yeah. So Karen, first of all, tell us what the SBE Council is all about and what kind of support you give to your clients and constituents.
You bet. So the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council, SBE Council, we are an advocacy, research, and education organization dedicated to promoting entrepreneurship and protecting small business. And for more than 30 years now, we have been working on and have worked on a range of private sector and public policy initiatives to strengthen the ecosystem for strong startup activity and small business growth. So we do a lot of advocacy on the policy side, up on Capitol Hill, in the regulatory agencies, with the administration, on promoting policies that are going to be beneficial for small businesses, such as access to capital, access to markets, regulatory reforms and changes, a lot on trade, intellectual property, the whole range of issues really that touch, this really important ecosystem. And then we do a lot of research on major initiatives or emerging issues, how small business is sort of reacting to developments or disruptive technologies,
Sure.
in the environment. So right now we've got a range of big studies going on AI in small business and surveys on small business owners and their adoption and use of AI. And then we have a great stable of experts, small business experts that put together, different type of content, for our members and, for those who sign up for our small business insider e-newsletter on any number of the pain points and the how-to, the technical, type of information so that they can better compete in the marketplace.
Wow, Karen. So this is such a timely conversation. A lot of our audience is in very disparate lines of work or industries or types of businesses, but you literally could help every single member of our podcast audience as a small and mid-sized business, right? It's exactly the type, regardless of industry, it's exactly the type of people you help.
That's exactly right. I mean, our membership is as broad as the small business sector is itself. So,
wow.
And we know, a lot of small businesses, there is a commonality, in some of their pain points, right? Whether it's, access to capital or finding the employees that they need, or, working through some of the disruptive technological periods like AI. What are the best tools? What are other business people doing? Access to markets, regulatory issues, broad-based regulatory issues that, whether it's tax issues or labor issues. So, there is a lot of commonality across sectors in terms of these issues, and we're working very hard on the policy front to ensure that there are common sense solutions, that lower barriers and that will make it easier for businesses to compete, just in a very fast changing environment, right? In a very competitive environment. And as you know, right now, Rob, a very uncertain environment, given what's happening geopolitically and with costs, inflation, and energy, and all of that.
So, Karen, let's dig right in. Let's talk to us about a time when the environment for small business was challenged, whether it was geopolitical or financial or regulatory. And you've been part of this council for so long that talk to us about a time when the environment was challenged and what you did to navigate, not only your organization, but your constituents around that time.
Well, there's been a lot of those periods, those ups and downs, right?
Oh, for sure.
If you just look at, what happened during the COVID era and during the shutdowns. And we played a really big role in sort of fashioning what the PPP program would look like. And it was forever changing, Rob. I mean,
Yeah.
they thought, oh, this is going to be a 3-month program, right? It ended up being a much longer program. So we were always providing feedback in terms of what small businesses need and what the reality was of that program and the other types of programs that the federal government was doing. And that related a lot, obviously, to money and access to capital. And that, I would say another one that really, another period, that I remember so well was during the financial crisis, back in that 2008, 2007, 2008, 2009 period when
Right.
President Obama was elected. And boy, I tell you that the capital and credit markets just froze up. I mean, most small businesses could not get access, to the money that they needed or raise money, in the marketplace. It was very, very difficult. So two of my members actually, put together legislation or an idea to make equity and debt-based crowdfunding legal, which really allowed small businesses, to raise money online from non-accredited investors. And, this was, it moved the quickest I've ever seen any legislation move, Rob, because that's how dire the situation was from a capital markets perspective. But it was also embedded in a larger bill called the Jobs Act that did a lot to, modernize SEC laws. And when you're talking about equity and debt-based crowdfunding, we're talking about, an 80-year-old law back then, close to 15 years ago, that really just was not reflective of the modern marketplace. So that was an extraordinary time. We worked with someone within the Obama administration, got bipartisan support up on Capitol Hill, had to do a lot of education about, well, what is crowdfunding? Back then, it was a gift-based and reward-based crowdfunding. And we go, no, we want to make this real. I mean, that's real, but we want to really make this an opportunity for, for customers or people that believe in businesses to invest in those that they believe in. So that became law. I mean, it took 3 years to write the rules on that. And now you have close to 1.5 billion or more that's been raised. I think it's more than that. That's an outdated number. By close to 10,000 companies, using equity and debt-based crowdfunding. We said it would democratize access to capital, allowing women and minority entrepreneurs who did not have, most small businesses didn't have access to venture capitalists, right?
Right.
So this made a huge difference, and it did democratize access to capital. And to this day, we're working on changes, Rob. And we'd like to take the 5 million cap and lift that to 10 million. We're working on some things that are moving through the Congress, actually move through the House right now, that would make it easier to comply with SEC rules. I mean, just making tweaks here and there that would really make a difference on lowering the cost of raising that capital, for businesses who want to use that vehicle, to access capital. So that's another example. I mean, we're also instrumental in putting together health savings accounts. I mean, there were MSAs back in the day, and it was a test and pilot project for small businesses. That's how MSAs, which are now 40 million in this country, billions and billions, in money in HSAs, that started as a small pilot project during the Clinton years that we spearheaded with businesses with 50 employees or less, self-employed and small business people. Mm-hmm. We tested that. We piloted it with small businesses. And then from there, it's blown out. And the same thing, Rob, we're still trying to make changes to that to make them truly universal HSAs and do things that will really give them more power in the marketplace and bring more price sensitivity to healthcare costs.
Sure. So Karen, I mean, I think everybody in our audience today knows what an HSA or an MSA is. They know what crowdfunding is, even though they may not participate in it. But you were, essential in the creation of both as laws in the U.S. and the crowdfunding being actually illegal.
Yes.
Before you and your members, tried to figure out how to make it legal and how to get better access to capital. That's truly fascinating. So yeah, that's a great example of how you managed through a downtime and created new laws and new ways of thinking and really bring out the creativity in small and mid-sized business, which I think is what all of our audience wants to hear every day.
And Rob, I would have to say that, when we tell, entrepreneurs and small businesses that they can make a big difference in the policymaking process, they really can.
Sure.
I brought, members of our organization to Democrat White Houses, Republican White Houses, up
Sure.
on Capitol Hill, where they've told their story and said, hey, this would be a solution. This is really working. And it's just amazing, when you see the legislative and the policy wheels begin to turn, and then something actually being changed into law. And both with health savings accounts and with crowdfunding, regulated
Mhm.
crowdfunding. I mean, those ideas came from entrepreneurs in the marketplace. That was like, hey, why
Right.
don't we try something different? And so I'm always encouraging entrepreneurs and business people to come to me with their ideas. I mean, what's outdated?
Hmm.
Where are the barriers? I mean, what are the laws that are not allowing this to happen? And
Hmm.
maybe we can change those, because you do have members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, particularly on the access to capital issue, I will say, that are really want these ideas, and are and do actually like working on a bipartisan basis, even though it doesn't seem to be so sometimes. But there's a lot of positive things that happen when small business owners and entrepreneurs bring members of Congress their ideas.
So Karen, that your existence is so valuable, right? Not only from a standpoint of you literally changed laws when laws were preventing action, but you also inspired creativity
Mm-hmm.
in bringing around a solution that just it wasn't against the law. It just didn't exist at all. That's just fascinating. So I can't tell you enough how much I support your efforts and wish you all the best. But so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about a period in time when, boy, small business was really cranking, right? Growth was happening across all small and mid-sized businesses, and how do you also navigate that with your constituents and your members um, on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And you do have those periods where, things seem to be going well in the economy. There's a lot of confidence among small business owners. But there's always something that needs to be fixed, Rob. I mean, from a policy perspective, whether it's SBA loans or, some regulation that is just, I mean, I can think of some regulations where the pendulum has swung back and forth and back and forth. For example,
Sure.
the independent contractor rule or regulation, where, one administration wanted to make it very restricted to be an independent contractor. The next one came along and said, no, we're going to change those rules again. Then they went back, to being restrictive. So there's a lot that needs to be fixed under the hood, or tinkered with. I mean, whether it's tax rules and tax laws, thresholds, that government uses in terms of any type of regulation, or even SEC rules where they're outdated and they need to be changed. So um, it's also, when things seem to be going well, there's a lot of great conversations around trade and new trade agreements and opening, global markets to trade. So we've been also very involved, one of the leading groups in representing small businesses on the trade front. So when there's a new trade agreement put into place, we want to make sure that it's modernized, for example, the digital age, and that it takes into account that small businesses are actually they dominate in global trade. I mean, their numbers, not necessarily the volume, but this is an opportunity for U.S. based small businesses to reach 90% of the consumer marketplace through these trade agreements. So what can we do in those trade agreements to, again, lower barriers at the border, making it common sense, for other countries to do things that will open up their markets. So that, on the trade and on the market access front, we get very, very, very active, given that there are opportunities, and also just constantly looking at where the pain points are and where they exist. And, even during good times, Rob, back, I would say pre-COVID, entrepreneurship and the number of people starting businesses wasn't where it should be based on, historical trends. I mean, we actually saw a time during the financial crisis years where more businesses were closing than starting. So thankfully, we're back to more businesses starting than closing. But we're wondering, well, what is it, about, certain periods that encourage, people to start businesses? How can we encourage, more people to start businesses? What are the barriers at the local level? And now we see a lot of people, 5 million employee numbers, tax ID numbers that are been filed each and every year for the past 5 years. That's extraordinary. That's like, 40 to 50% more people filing those, business applications. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll start them. But now we're looking at, well, gee, what can we do to make sure that those people who file those business applications actually launch a business?
Interesting. Okay.
Where is the rub, that will get more of them to take that next step? And so, and it's the big thing is, Rob, if you're a good business owner, you're listening to your customers. So, and then we also do a lot of surveying of business owners and our members and say, hey, where is it that where we need to be focusing on, so that we are very, very laser-like focused on what they're, not only their challenges, but their opportunities, and how can we increase those opportunities?
Of course. So Karen, just talk to us a little bit about, what the SBE Council offers small and mid-sized businesses as far as, regulatory support, advocacy on Capitol Hill. But what are those things you kind of do every day that our audience should be aware of?
Well, I would say, our primary role and, why our members, do join us and support us is we are their voice, in Washington, D.C., and also at the international level when needed. And we work with partners on the ground, in state capitals as well. So when there's a regulatory proceeding going through the Congress, a regulatory proceeding going through an agency, or if there's legislation being proposed in the Congress, we'll look at it from the small business lens and say, is this something that's going to be good for small business? Is it going to be something that will increase their burdens and costs? So there's a lot of bills, Rob, that are always being proposed in the Congress. And we get members of Congress reaching out to us and saying, hey, can you look at our legislation? Can you see if it's something that will be practical, that will really help small businesses, So
Right.
we vet that, those for members of Congress. We actually endorse their bills. We may oppose their bills too, if it's going to be painful for entrepreneurs and small businesses. I'll attend a lot of White House roundtables and events with members of the president's cabinet and even the president himself. It's always been him for the last 30 years that I've been doing this. And they want to know, what is happening on the ground. So we're sort of their representative. I hate, but this is the word, they're personal lobbyists, up on Capitol Hill and making sure that, their views, are being represented. And it's not just big business, it's not just, other type of interests, that are at the table. So our job is to be at the table all the time when things impact small business. And if you look at my schedule this week, it's packed with that. I've got a Department of Labor roundtable on the new independent contractor regulation that's been proposed. Next week I'll be attending some DC-based global conferences. I'll be participating with a couple of members of Congress in their press conferences on bills that they're going to be introducing. We'll be sending our members to the Hill to testify before Congress. I also testify before Congress. Every day I'm talking to the media about issues that they want to know about, and then spend a lot of time on research reports and surveys as well. Looking at emerging issues, things are popping, and what we could do to impact those issues as well.
Sure. So Karen, besides obviously going to your website, which is sbecouncil.org, how can our audience, stay more connected with you and learn more about all your different offerings and support you offer them?
Well, if you go to our website, as you mentioned, Rob, sbecouncil.org, anyone can sign up for our Small Business Insider e-newsletter for free. I mean, that is
Great.
complimentary. So each and every week that covers everything that we're doing, from op-eds, that I may have written, to letters to the Hill, to regulatory comments that we filed, to a lot of how-to information, that our experts have put together on some emerging issues, to our latest research on AI in small businesses. So that's a good way to sort of get a taste of who we are and what we do for small business on a regular basis. And then from there, people can become engaged as they want to, right? They can find us on Twitter, SBE Council, same thing, Facebook, SBE Council, LinkedIn, SBE Council.
Great.
Personally, I'm on all those social media handles too. So we're engaging members through social media, but we'd love for folks to join us and then become directly involved, with our efforts, and, signing up for a lot of our survey instruments that we do. Cause we do a lot of surveys. We want to hear what is actually happening in the marketplace with small businesses, and use that for advocacy and research, or, if a corporate person might come to us and say, hey, how does small businesses feel on this issue, if they're looking at a product or
Hmm.
services that benefits
Sure.
small businesses. So that's, go to the website, sign up for SBE Council, Small Business Insider for free. And then, from there, I'm telling you, there's so many opportunities to get involved and participate in everything that we're doing.
Well, I think that's so important and so timely for our audience. So I appreciate all that information. So Karen, what does the near term look like in your view, not only for the SBE Council, but for your members, right? The small and mid-sized business leaders out there. What does the next 1 to 3 years look like?
Well, I would say, the big thing, obviously, with, what's happening overseas, I mean, if that gets settled sooner rather than later, then I think, that will be very positive for small businesses, because obviously that drives a lot of uncertainty. But,
Of course.
Rob, I've seen small businesses and entrepreneurs go through so many disruptive periods, including COVID-19. And I would have
Yes.
to say that, given their size and their agility, but also their embrace of technology and technological
Mm,
solutions. AI, I have never seen a technology that has been adopted so quickly based on all of our surveys. 82% of business owners and entrepreneurs are using AI tools right now. And the return on investment in those tools is just extraordinary, for their business, and being able to compete with larger firms, being able to cut costs, being able to keep prices stable for customers, being able to fill gaps in the workforce if they can't find someone. I mean, they're like, well, yeah, I found an AI tool that actually could help in that regard. So I'm very bullish on entrepreneurs and small businesses, given their size, their flexibility, their creativity, and all the great digital tools, from platforms to AI,
right.
that are available. And I think from that is going to create a whole nother innovative period, for small businesses.
So that, oh, sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean
No,
to
and
interrupt.
I mean, but there's still challenges. There's no doubt. I mean, we've got our eye on the ball on, we really need to lower healthcare costs. We're doing a lot more,
Yes.
on access to capital. It's getting a little tight. You know what I mean? It was a good period at the start of the year, and now it's starting to tighten up a little bit. So I mean, sort of those core issues we're working on a regular basis. But I do, it's just, as I said, it's just been, I'm always optimistic on entrepreneurs and small businesses, because I've seen them being able to navigate, so many challenges. I mean, it's not easy, but I feel like they are the solution to a lot of these challenges that we have on a regular basis. And given the digital tools and technologies that are out there, that, they'll be able to bring those to the market, a lot more quickly.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see where small businesses are need to be actively involved in policy and advocacy for themselves, essentially, on Capitol Hill, because they're able to pivot quickly if necessary. And if the pivot doesn't work out exactly as they expected, it's not as impactful to a much larger entity or much larger organization. So they're able to pivot and maybe pivot again without too much risk.
You know,
Right?
Rob, you're 100% correct in that regard. But
Mm.
also, I mean, with AI, I think small businesses that have adopted, I think they've received more of the immediate benefits than larger corp companies, because they quickly absorb them, and bigger companies are still trying to figure out what to do with them. But there's going to be some disruption with that. There's no doubt about it. You see it with some of the larger companies now, although many of them are also adjusting, to the big hiring that they did, during COVID and post-COVID. But I do think that ability to pivot very, very quickly serves small businesses well. And particularly when we get into these more disruptive and uncertain period of time. And they're very savvy too about staying. Well, they have the tools now to more quickly stay in contact with their customers, right? And
That's right.
listening to them and hearing about cool things or new things that they can be doing to differentiate themselves in the marketplace, or to bring a new idea, to the marketplace, that no other business is doing. So those are the benefits of being small, and why it's great that I think that you have this podcast, because I think it's going to continue to grow given
I
the
hope it
interest in
does.
entrepreneurship and,
Yeah.
and sort of, and the more people that are starting businesses. I'm very excited about that.
That's great. That's great. So, oh gosh, lost my train of thought. We'll edit this out.
Mhm.
So a lot of our CEOs on this podcast are talking about AI and implementing, AI tools. And they have but most of their efforts are focused not necessarily on reducing headcount or cutting costs. Their efforts are more focused on improving efficiency and effectiveness in their organization. They're looking at making their teams smarter and more efficient rather than cutting headcount. Are you seeing the same things in your discussions with small businesses?
Yes. I mean, that fully aligns with all of our surveying that we've been doing on AI and small business adoption over the last 3 years, because, and we've been pushing back against the narratives that this is going to be the great job destroyer. And we're like,
Yeah.
well, this is what small businesses are doing once they use AI. Once they're saving time and money using AI, they and their employees are able to focus on higher value work, right?
Right.
And that it's, I mean, a very small number saying it's actually reducing headcount. It's like 8%. The rest are like, well, I'm adding new
Only
jobs, or
8%.
yes,
That's
I'm adding new jobs, or I am. Well, it's both, like it's transforming jobs,
yes.
and it's totally changing, a lot of the jobs that we have. But you're absolutely right that the business owner, both the business owner and the employee are saving time and money. And we estimate in our last survey, based on the hours that owners gave us, that that's a cumulative saving of $243.6 billion per year.
My
That
goodness.
they're turning that into more innovative ways, better ways that they could serve their customers. Their employees love it. I mean, when we asked, what has been the employee reaction to AI? It's like only 2% say it's negative. The rest think it's great that they're sort of removing, the pain and the labor intensive, ugly work,
Sure.
and that there's a tool for that. And they can actually, it's more meaningful work when they can work, on the business, and they can focus on this higher value work in terms of maybe doing more research or expanding the customer base, or doing some testing, with some new products or services. But what
Sure.
you're hearing from your CEOs, Rob, is exactly, what we've heard, from our members and through the surveys as well. And that's what we're sharing with
Oh,
Congress, because, we constantly want to say, look, we know there's going to be disruption, but this, the doom and gloom, it's not doom and gloom. And being that we've been around, Rob, for over 30 years, we heard this during the internet era as well. So we said, look, we heard the same
yes, we
thing
did.
when the internet came along, and that did not happen. That was
It
really,
did
really
not
good for
happen.
small business. Remember?
That's right. So, Karen, there are two quotes from my podcast guests here in the Think Small podcast that I have in my head all the time, and I will never forget them, relating to adoption of AI tools. And one gentleman said, "We're not going to use AI to displace our people. AI is not going to displace our people. People that know AI will displace our people." And I thought that was fascinating. The second was CEOs are looking for AI to make them more efficient so they have the time to be more human with their customers. And that quote came directly from a technology provider who installs AI tools in their customers. He's looking at AI to be more human. What a paradox.
Yes. And, I was thinking about this, Rob, when I read, a lot of the qualitative quotes that come back on our surveys and I talk to our members. And I have to agree with that 100%. I think, there was a period where, and maybe we're still in it, where it's like, oh, everyone's looking at their phones, everyone's doing this. And, you're like, well, people miss the human engagement. That's why I thought, well, real stores are not going to go away, brick and mortar. You know what I mean? I always felt that even during the internet, like, oh, we're not going to have any more stores. I'm like, no. People like to go out. They have to, and they like community. So, that's what a lot of small business owners do through their stores now and their brick and mortar. But I think you're absolutely right that people are going to have more of the people skills, right? Because that is what's going to be needed and what's going to be more craving, through AI. And I think that's going to fuel actually sort of this new regeneration of, well, how do young people, right? I mean, how do we get them to engage? And, so the importance of the social engagement tools and, all the other human interaction tools that are just very, very important, certainly to running a business and to being competitive and being able to do that at scale. So, but AI allows you to do that at scale, but you still need that human element, right? So, yes. So I think that people, from what the doom and gloomers predicted, and I have to say that only 7% of the small businesses that we surveyed are actually doom and gloomers. The rest are really optimistic on AI. They're going to look back just like they do with the internet, and say, gosh, I was totally off on that. We'll remind them too.
This is just a sample size of one, Karen, but my thoughts are, this is truly the third major industrial revolution of our time. The first being, the Industrial Revolution in the early 1900s. Second was the internet. And third is AI. And every single time there's been a drastic net add of jobs. Mm-hmm. And I'm not and if you just kind of stand back a little bit and take it from that standpoint, I don't see how this is any different.
Yes.
We don't necessarily know what the jobs are going to be 3 to 5 years from now, but I have faith that this tool is going to be so effective in making us more effective that we're going to see more employment 5 and 10 years from now than less.
Yeah, I totally share your optimism. You're right. Given all the new industries that were created out of every era of disruption, whether it's the internet or the app economy and the social, right? I mean, what came out of platforms from the Airbnbs to Ubers to, there's so much. So I think there's going to be so much more exciting things that come out. And then with quantum computing, I think it is a very, very exciting time. And that's what we always, tell members of Congress or policy leaders is like, you just got to look at the past and see what's happened. People have been saying this since the horse and buggy, right? I mean, the same thing is like the horse and buggy. And then, oh gosh, when when the railroads came along, oh, this is the end of humanity, and it's like, no, every change really does create new opportunities. And you're right. I share your optimism on this front as well, Rob.
Well, I'm glad your membership in the SBE Council shares the same thing. That gives me a better thoughts and feelings about the future. Karen, this has been such a great conversation. I urge every member of the Think Small podcast audience to get involved with the SBE Council. Go to download their newsletter and be involved, because truly we do have a voice, and you're that conduit of that voice to Congress.
That's right. And Rob, just one more thing. If anyone has any ideas, or if there's something that they see that's happening right now that,
Yeah.
is paying attention to this, or this is a policy piece, we want to hear about that, because I'm telling you, that's where we get our intelligence from your CEOs, from business
Hmm.
owners about these issues, and then we can run with them, and,
Right.
and make a difference for them.
Well, Karen Kerrigan, President and CEO of the SBE Council, thank you so much for your time today and your engagement with our audience.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you for everything that you do.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I don't feel I do enough, but thank you for that nice comment, Karen. Thanks again.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?